Welcome to Reaching Our Sisters Everywhere, and today we will be reviewing how Rose transitioned to a virtual baby cafe, facilitated by myself, Andrea Serrano. Please note that the webinar is being recorded to share on the Rose website for those that could not make the online webinar. I'm Andrea Serrano, Program Director at Reaching Our Sisters Everywhere, and I'll be taking you through the process in which we use to transition our baby cafe to a virtual space. Before I start, we'd love to share the mission of Rose. Reaching Our Sisters Everywhere was founded to address breastfeeding disparities for communities of color. Rose works to normalize breastfeeding by providing resources and networking opportunities for individuals and communities. As a national expert and in partnership with communities, we build equity in maternal and child health through culturally competent training, education, advocacy, and support. Although this is not providing any continuing education credits, we would still like to share that there are no financial disclosures. All the resources being presented are resources that we already pay for the services and so are not getting paid for. And I would also like to share that this is our steps that we utilize to implement this process. And so this is not a cookie cutter solution for everyone. However, this might be a nice outline or things that can be taken in consideration in trying to replicate the process. We do recognize that some of our formatting or tools that we're utilizing may not be widely applicable to every person viewing this, but perhaps the consideration, thought process, framework can be useful as you make your in-person group and online. So, an overview of what will be shared is I will give some insight into our original baby cafe setup and then discuss the virtual baby cafe strategizing, implementation steps, current progress, and challenges faced. So, to start off, Rose operated two baby cafes. The first one held on Mondays from 1 to 3, and the second one, newly founded, launched February of 2020 this year, and that one was held on the second and fourth Thursday of each month from 6 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. Our first baby cafe held on Mondays were essentially running since 2016, and so we have kind of built great awareness around it throughout the community, and so transitioning to online was a bit more of a simpler process as far as attendance goes, in comparison to the Rose Baby Cafe that takes place on Thursdays, as that was newly launched. Would like to also add that our baby cafes essentially serve as a drop-in setting, so parents are not required to be here for the entire time. And we opted to use the baby cafe licensing for this because they've already had some great framework around leading the groups, and so we are licensed for both of these. The baby cafe that's held on Thursday is supported through funds from the National Association of City and County Health Officials, and that one is in collaboration with DeKalb County Board of Health. And so that evening baby cafe is held at the Board of Health on the selected dates, and was really also targeting families who partner our grandmothers weren't necessarily able to come to the daytime Monday baby cafe. So we wanted to present an opportunity for families and their champions to be able to participate at the baby cafe in a time that would be at the after work hour. Our current facilitators for our baby cafes include Mary Jackson, Tanisha Sellers, Andrea Serrano, myself, Tashara Johnson and Tony Nettles. Tashara Johnson and Tony Nettles supports the Thursday Baby Cafe, while Miss Jackson, Tanisha, and myself facilitate the Monday Baby Cafe. As previously noted, our in-person baby cafes are set up as a drop-in, and so it provides an opportunity for families to come in the hours that are between the hours that we operate, but as needed, so that way they don't have to be there the entire time, nor do they need to show up right at the beginning. It allows for that flexibility. And with our baby cafe, Reaching Our Brothers Everywhere, a program that targets and focus on fathers, also has a bit of a meetup during that time as well. So that way, as families come for support, there's that interim period where we're addressing that specific need, but then fathers able to connect with the Reaching Our Brothers Everywhere men and be in conversation with them. So that's initially how we have had our in-person baby cafe set up, and it was very much so very informal process to allow for flexibility and as needed when we would do some one-on-one support, but also come back to the group. So there has always been a sense of tone that the baby cafe is a shared space of coming together and getting support while also building a village with other families that are going through the breastfeeding journey. So, in trying to take a support setting that is very much so well geared around, interpersonal connection and so forth, and moving it to a virtual space, it took a lot of strategizing. And in this case, some of the key things that we had to take into consideration in strategizing on this process was one, accessibility and maintaining a drop-in feel. We wanted this process to be easy for our families to funnel into to get to the virtual space, and also make it easy for them to come in and out as they needed to, like our in-person drop-in cafe. So that would be okay if they didn't come right at the beginning, or it would be okay if they didn't stay throughout the entire time. So trying to map out the best way we could achieve that and limit the complication in being able to participate. The other piece was privacy and security. We certainly wanted to ensure that the space was going to be private, so that random people that didn't need breastfeeding support wasn't just coming into the chat, that we weren't gonna worry about those situations, but it also provided a way for us as facilitators to be able to know who was coming in, just in case we needed to have any security measures in place for that. So that was something that definitely was at the top of our minds in moving this virtual space moving the in-person to a virtual space. And lastly, simplicity, with all five of us kind of in rotation in facilitating the baby cafes. It was going to be important that as facilitators, it was easy to kind of keep up with who was coming in, get logged into the virtual space, and monitor and provide the support without having to complicate this process, given that we weren't sure how long we would be needing to maintain this format. So keeping it as simple as process for all the facilitators involved, and of course also the parents, was something that we spent quite a bit of time strategizing around as well. So our updated flyers for the virtual baby cafe consist of this shared time, and one of the things that we did do was increase the frequency of our Thursday baby cafe. So instead of it being offered on the second and fourth Thursday of each month, it is now weekly from 6 to 8 p.m. the thing to keep in mind is that we are now in a space where access to the resources upon discharge is definitely a concern, as social distancing is in play, and being able to find and locate where to go and get information when challenges present themselves is definitely going to be and continue to be a need for our communities, as it was a need prior to the pandemic, and has now, in a sense, kind of worsened due to social distancing and needing to stay away. And so this ability to present an opportunity for access to resources is going to be very important for us. And so we went ahead and increased the frequency. So essentially, we have virtual baby cafes twice a week, and families would simply need to visit the website at that link, breastfeedingrose.org/Rose Baby Cafe, in order to sign in for the baby cafe like they would have done at a in-person baby cafe. And so I will now take you through the steps of implementing this virtual baby cafe. The resources and subscriptions that we already have pre-existing is what we utilize for this space. So we're currently using JotForm, Google Drive, and BlueJeans to facilitate this process. These are resources we already had within our toolbox, primarily because some of the other online interactive work that we've done previously with some of our other programming. So it was determining and mapping out how to utilize our existing online subscriptions into making this virtual baby cafe work out and be a useful resource. So when a parent is preparing to get into our virtual baby cafe, they would come to our website, and it is recommended that they use the sign-in button at the time of the baby cafe. It makes it a little bit more of a seamless process. And so we listed the times below. Once again, Mondays from 1 to 3 Eastern Time, and Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And so they would click on that sign-in button, sign in for the baby cafe, which will redirect them to our JotForm. So with JotForm, there is an opportunity for subscription. They have a free version, and the prices that I have listed above is the monthly rates versus the annual rate. So the monthly rate tends to be a little bit more than the annual rate. However, the annual rate is something you tend to have to pay all up front for versus the monthly rate, which doesn't lock you down to a contract. So that's one thing to keep in mind. However, the free one is quite adequate because you're able to have 5 forms, up to 100 submissions a month, I believe. And so this one, can very much so be useful for anyone, kind of getting fresh into this. One other thing to note is that the sign-in sheet is very similar to the basic sign-in sheet we would have at our regular cafes. So there's not a whole lot of data that we're gathering in our sign-in sheet. So as far as it relates to the HIPAA compliance, just to offer, but this gives a full view of what this particular form platform has to offer with this pricing. So once a mom clicks the link, or parent clicks the link to attend the baby cafe, they are redirected to the JotForm link. And so here they would put in the current date, today's date. They would identify which virtual baby cafe they are attending. And this is a special note to make, that depending on their responses here, on which baby cafe they're attending will determine a few couple of follow-up questions or what happens once they submit the form. The other thing that is collected is identifying if this is their first time attending the baby cafe, because once again, based on their response, will determine how many more questions they would have to answer in order to complete the sign-in form. And then lastly, this is the checkbox of some of the concerns are, essentially what are things that are necessary to help them meet their breastfeeding goals that they are able to check off on, and they can check more than one. So these aren't all the questions we ask. These are just some of the questions that we ask as a part of signing in to the virtual baby cafe. Now, on the back end of the JOT form and some of the setups, one of the things that you want to consider about whatever form platform you're using is that hopefully it has something called conditional logic or form logic, where depending on your response will determine certain activities for that form or show certain questions. So these are some examples of the form logic that we have. So here, if the parent signing up for the virtual baby cafe is coming during a time that isn't our usual baby cafe time, then they'll just get an email that lets them know when we meet, right? However, if they are logging in or signing in during the time of a baby cafe, then where the red arrow is pointed, the baby cafe or the form will automatically redirect them to the Blue Jeans after they submit the form. Okay. The other piece to it is because there's so many of us facilitators, and certain facilitators only operate on certain days, based on which day has been selected for the virtual baby cafe they are attending, it will send notifications to specific baby cafe facilitators. So take, for example, Tashara only facilitates on Thursday. So that third purple column is an example of, if the person selected the Thursday, then Tashara will also be notified that a person is signed up for that baby cafe, as opposed to everyone getting every baby cafe alert for both the days, especially for the days that they're not facilitating. The other piece is depending on certain questions, responses, like how a parent responds to the question will determine what additional questions they see. So for example, those that are returning back to the baby cafe, this is not their first time, then a lot of our required questions that they would have needed to answer during the first time coming automatically become unrequired and then set to high, so they become hidden. This way, that parent can, has a shortened process for completing the sign-in form, as well as being a little bit more efficient for not having to put repetitive information on and on. But we can also at the same time still track how often that particular parent is attending our baby cafe. On the notification pieces, notification comes to us as facilitators, so we're able to see all the responses to the to those submitting the baby cafe form, and then the autoresponder is the message that goes to the participants. So just in case for some reason, they're not redirected directly to the Blue Jeans virtual space, there's at least an email that they receive that provides a link for them to be able to enter. And, we do this because everyone's emails are kind of set up differently. So that way they can always re-sign in and get that email notification and not have to go searching through their inbox to find the previous one. So these are just components that would be good to consider in whatever form setup that you might be utilizing to ensure that it's able to do things like form logic to reduce the complexity of having to sign in each time, who gets notified, and the other piece is integrations with other platforms. So JotForm allows us to integrate Google Sheets and Google Drive in. They have a whole bunch of other integrations that I'm not going to touch base on at this particular moment. I'm specifically going to hone in on the Google Sheets and Google Drive points of integration with our JotForm. So as information from JotForm is completed by the parent, that information goes directly into our Google Drive. And so it does so in a couple of different ways. So with the Google Drive integration, it creates a folder, and in that folder, each person, and depends on how you set this up too. So I definitely recommend, you share this with team members that are very familiar with kind of setting up some of these processes. But it creates a folder for each parent that has signed up for the baby cafe. And so an example of this is here, my test one here. So my test folder is called Andrea Test 2. And, as long as first and last name are the same, it will, an email is the same. It'll kind of just create that folder for them. And for each time they visit, in this folder, a PDF will populate for you. So that way you can kind of easily track how many times a person has been in attendance to the virtual baby cafe. So a great tracking tool, and also this information is shared with the team of facilitators so that way they have access to seeing this as well. The other thing is the Google Sheets, and this is essentially Google's version of Excel spreadsheet. So simultaneously, as those folders are being created from the JotForm, the information is also being inputted into a spreadsheet. In this case, I did hide all the other important information. I just kind of showed our little test versions here. So you can see it gets emails, phone numbers, and you're able to share this out broadly to your co-facilitator, so that way they can also track and see who has signed in and be able to touch base as necessary. So both the folder where individual PDFs are created for each visit is shared with our team of facilitators, and so is this spreadsheet. Lastly, as the JotForms are completed, an email notification is sent to the facilitators as stated. So essentially, I watch the email so I can pay attention to who has signed in. And the beautiful thing is that, I get a glimpse of, what they checked off as their primary concern. I get to see the name, all who's coming in, and there's usually a few minutes of lag between the form coming in and then that parent actually joining the space because of the time it takes for the app to open after they've been redirected. So then I get a little time to prepare the facilitators, kind of let them know, or another person is joining us, and also being able to see what their concern is so I can make sure that that need is addressed during the virtual space. And same thing with other facilitators because they also get the notification. However, I have volunteered myself to be the person that kind of keeps up with who's about to come in, so that way all of us isn't having to watch our emails. Having the JotForm app, you're able to get those notifications as a banner on your phone as well. However, I opted not to have the whole app on my phone. Therefore, I just, rely on the email to let me know who's getting ready to enter in. So once the parent has completed the job form and submitted, they are then redirected to BlueJeans. So once again, with BlueJeans, I'm showing the monthly rate versus the annual, because the annual is something you got to pay all the way up front. Monthly, you're not tied to a particular contract, and these are the features that's broken down. I have participated in quite a few different webinar platforms, and but I haven't participated in the space of as an administrator of it, the admin person. So I cannot speak knowledgeably to what the back end of other video conferencing features are like. However, if yours have very similar features that I'm going to point out, then you can maybe possibly utilize these same steps. So one of the things that we appreciate about BlueJeans is that there's an option for folks to be able to join from the browser, as opposed to having to download the app on their computer. So this works out if there's some restrictions on the family being able to download a new program to a computer. However, for the mobile app, you do need to download the app in order to participate. I haven't been able to work out a way of how you're able to just join from the mobile phone browser. The other thing is that the app also allows you to just join by audio. So if the parent opts not to join with their video, and so that reduces some of the data usage and whatnot by just joining by audio, but then they're able to listen in and be a part of the conversation. One of the features that BlueJeans has that only the person that has the admin account, is able to utilize is called the breakout session. And this has been a feature that we appreciate in the case where while leading a group, there is, a family, a parent that may have some really specific in-depth needs that needs a little bit more direct one-on-one consult. Then as the admin, I'm able to create this breakout session, and one of us facilitators I can add in one of the facilitators into that breakout session with that mom, and they can have the one-on-one time that's needed. And then once they leave the breakout, they're able to come back into the full webinar. I cannot attest to whether or not other platforms have that feature. If they do, that's one of the ways you can find some workaround with needing to do some individual one-on-one consults. So that's one thing that we haven't had to necessarily use just yet, but it's an excellent feature that we know we have the capability of using if need be. Because in the in-person baby cafe, what would happen is, if a family came in that needed some particular needs, there'll be time set aside to do that one-on-one, and then kind of rejoin the group. And although it will all still happen in the same space, it's just the way that interaction may happen allows for that more personal connection. So this is the way we're attempting to replicate that in the online format, our virtual space format. So current progress with moving to the virtual baby cafe and, doing our best to make it work under the circumstances. Thus far, we've had 5 sessions held to date. Thursday on the 9th will be our 6th session. So 3 Mondays so far, 2 Thursdays, with the 3rd Thursday coming up this week. And what we have found is that our Monday sessions have been most popular so far. And that's not too much of a surprise, because of the fact that we have had that running for quite a bit of time. So it's a bit of time and space that is some regularity for the families that have attended the Monday one. The variation of needs from prenatal to teething, those conversations come up. I can say that we don't always spend the full 2 hours specifically talking about breastfeeding. Sometimes the topic can go broader, and it's an opportunity for socializing. And so, in this time of social distancing, it's also awesome to have a time to kind of socialize a bit and just kind of, you know, build build further relationships with other parents on the call, and also not have to worry about your baby making any sounds on the call, because that's what's expected, right? So that space is there for that. And thus far we haven't had too many we haven't had any issues with parents having to be redirected to the blue jeans from the form. One of the facilitators did point out that there was some difficulty in the redirection from when using Internet Explorer versus Chrome. So Chrome has been more seamless. As far as the app, most folks have been using the app when joining our virtual baby cafe, and so that hasn't had any difficulties, but it has been noted that Internet Explorer does create a little bit of a hiccup in trying to get into the virtual space. So challenges in regards to having the virtual baby cafe. So the Thursday evening baby cafe was definitely a brand new cafe that launched this year. So we had still been working on disseminating and building awareness around that additional resource. And so our Thursday evening attendance has been lacking, and we've been working on building that up. But we've also been working in collaboration with all our networks to help disseminate just information on both the virtual baby cafes, right? So this information has been shared with OB offices, pediatrician, our local health department has shared it amongst their partners. Some of the hospitals have included it in their discharge resources. And so, we're working through really sharing that information out to help build further awareness. And so we're not going to change the date or the time because of the fact that there's been a lot of work being put out to at least help inform that the 6 to 8 baby cafe is there. But there is also to note that the 6 to 8 time frame was originally created to help support families that are working and need the support still. So at least it was offered during the after work time frame. So with the changes that have occurred and the impact of this pandemic, a lot of those dynamics have changed. And so, the evening time, this might be the time families are trying to wind down the day from balancing everything that is occurring in the household. So we do acknowledge that piece as well. The other concern is around partner support. As previously stated, in the baby cafe that met in person, there would be times for partners and for fathers to be able to connect with the Reaching Our Brothers Everywhere men and kind of just get that moment to bond and get support in that capacity. But men supporting men in a sense, while mom and baby was in the regular baby cafe session. So at first they would have that time together where we're all as a team are working towards the need, and then at least there was a space for fathers right after, right immediately within our building space. But now that we're virtual, trying to figure out how we can navigate that as well. Also would like to acknowledge that not everyone has access to data, and we do note that this is still a barrier, and the amount of data required to participate in a virtual space can be difficult for families to be able to participate, are the competing needs right? Which ties into acknowledging families do have competing needs, that there may be older children that need the internet, computer, our attention at that time. And so, the time frames can be a barrier, which is one of the reasons why we're keeping our evening session as families find a new routine for what the daytime is looking like. There's also evening time to participate. We are considering how to relaunch our warm line, so that way there's still a call-in number that folks can reach when in need of getting some information and some support. So we're mapping out how to have that process unfold amongst our network of support providers, so families can have a number that they can reach a live person for additional support. So trying to map that out is, things we're taking into note, because one of the reasons why we didn't just share the number for the BlueJeans was, once again, we want to be able to monitor who is coming in. And so although the audio function is there through the app, we didn't specifically share out the phone number. The other thing is also acknowledging the overall state of families and the trauma that, all communities are facing right now. And, this is, difficult time, and other things that may be in context with that family, whether it is their own economic stability, bills, and, other competing things that are taking place, whether there's a loved one that is, directly affected by this pandemic. So understanding that there's a lot of different things that families are having to balance in this moment. And of course, just acknowledging the overall unknown of this whole situation. And, everyone taking it day by day, because we don't exactly know what tomorrow holds, or what things will look like in a month and so forth. So, just being in that space and acknowledging that space is important. So final takeaway is that implementing online support may look differently for you and your organization. And this is just one way that we went ahead and implemented this process. So I think the biggest thing is taking into account some of the considerations and strategies that we mapped out. What were things that we needed different platforms to be able to do, and how they folded into each other might be the type of capabilities you look into for your own software, our own platforms you are all using. I do not hold a specific expertise in all online platforms out there. As stated, this is really just trying to map out utilizing what we already had in place and folding it into to launch the virtual baby cafe. So that said, thank you for listening in on this webinar. And if you have questions, general questions, kind of overall things, please feel free to email. As far as, navigating some of the specific pieces on different platforms and services, I may not be the best person, because I cannot say that I know the background for every platform out there. However, as far as just like broad general clarifications made throughout this webinar, I'd be happy to answer those questions. So thank you again, and I wish you well and urge you to continue to take care of yourself as you support and care for families in your community. I'd like to